Welcome to Complex Numbers. Let's get started. Now all this time we've been working with real numbers. Real numbers are any number really that you can think of, and there are irrational numbers and rational. Irrational numbers are kind of like pi, a non-repeating decimal that goes on forever. Rational numbers are like 3/4. If that turned into a decimal, it would become 0.75, so it's a terminating decimal, or it could even be a repeating decimal, 0.3. So 1/3 would go on 0.33333. But irrational, like over here, there's no pattern to this, and it doesn't repeat, and it doesn't terminate the way this one does. So we're going to start looking at complex numbers. Complex numbers is any number that can be written like this: a plus bi. And a is the real number, like we just saw on the other slide, and bi is the imaginary unit. So when we've been working with, say, the number 5, it has this imaginary unit over here, but 0i just falls away and you just have 5. But now we're going to start using this imaginary unit. So an imaginary number, we've got I, like we see just right here. This I is the square root of -1. Before we weren't able to do square root of negative numbers, but now we're going to be able to with this imaginary part. So I squared, if you square the square root of -1, you just get -1. So imaginary numbers are square roots of negative numbers. And this part right here is what you're going to need to remember as we go through the unit. I is the square root of -1. I squared is -1. So let's do this example together. Previously, the square root of 16 we've always known to be 4. And actually, it can be 4 or it can be -4. Because 4 squared will be 16, or -4 squared will also be positive 16. So we would write that as the square root of 16 is plus or minus 4. Now we look over here at the square root of -16, which previously we couldn't do. Now we can because we have imaginary numbers, but we have to split it apart. So we have just the square root of 16 and the square root of -1. So we just split. We put the -1 inside one square root, and we took this positive 16 inside another square root. Now we can continue to simplify because we know the square root of 16 is plus or minus 4. And like we learned on the previous slide, the square root of -1 is I. So the square root of 16 is plus or minus 4. The square root of -16 is plus or minus 4i. Now when we have two complex numbers, see, remember this is the real part and this is the imaginary unit. When we want to add two complex numbers together, we just combine our like terms. 3 plus 6 is going to be 9. And then plus 4i minus 9i is -5i. So this is our answer. And we still have a real part and an imaginary part. When we subtract, we've got to distribute this negative first. So the negative times 6 is a -6. And a negative times -9i, or you could look at it as -1, since there's an imaginary one. Negative times -9i is a positive 9i. Now we do just like we did with the adding, and we combine our like terms. 3 minus 6 is -3, and plus 4i plus 9i is a plus 13i. So there's our answer for that. So with subtracting, distribute that negative sign and then combine your like terms. When you multiply two complex numbers together, we just FOIL. So 3 times 6 is 18, 3 times -9i is -27i, 4i times 6 is plus 24i, and then 4i times -9 is -36i squared. Now here's the part that's going to be important. We don't ever want an I squared in our answer, because if you remember, I squared equals negative 1. So we just substitute negative 1 in for I squared. So you got to do two things here. Combine these like terms. Negative 27i and 24i become negative 3i. And then you substitute a negative 1 in for this I squared right here. And now we have 18 minus 3i plus 36, because negative 36 times negative 1 is plus 36. And we keep combining our like terms. 18 plus 36 is 54. And now we have 54 minus 3i. So again, this is still our real number and our imaginary unit. Just with the multiplying, you've got to FOIL, plug in negative 1 for I squared, and then keep simplifying, combining your like terms until you get back to a complex number with a real part and an imaginary part. Don't forget to watch the next video. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you soon.